Welcome everyone to the latest Foundation Years vodcast episode in the physical activity series. Today we're continuing our exploration into how we can inspire and engage children and very young children within earlier settings engage in physical activities. And today, very pleased to say that we're going to be welcomed by Josh Candy, CEO and founder of Early Years PE, who has extensive experience in promoting physical education among early years children. Josh, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Hi Seb, thank you so much for having me. Really excited about this because it's obviously something that it lies deeply within my passions as well. One of the key reasons why I decided to start early years PE was because of the importance of our young children having the best start in life, and I believe that physical activity plays a key role with that.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. So, thinking about the bigger pictures you just touched upon, so the overall well-being of young children, how can physical activity support that?
I mean, I think it speaks enough the fact of we have so many problems in society with not just children but with adults as well. With obesity levels rising, everyone being sort of sedentary and sitting a lot more. You can order your shopping online and at a click of a button, that sort of stuff. So I think the paramount importance of being physical is at its highest now, not just with our children but with us as adults. And I think if we can embed a love and an enjoyment at the youngest of ages of being active, it's only going to be beneficial in the long run for everybody involved. So yeah, moving away from the kind of the norms of sitting and kind of like a classroom based feel to things, we've got to start looking at things of how can we do that with a bit of movement involved. What can we do in a daily basis to kind of get out a little bit more, or to move a bit more, or to just engage our minds in a different way? Because I think that's the other important thing is when we're more active, we have the capability and the sort of desire to learn more. Our brains are clicked in. There's studies that show that when after a walk, your brain is so much more active.
Yeah, absolutely. So, thinking about the work that you do on a daily basis with many settings, numerous settings, coming into contact with many educators and many children as well, how do you look to embed the intent for outdoor learning within your activities?
Mhm. Not just physically, but for anything that you do, I think you've got to have the intent sort of nailed down first of all. You've got to know what you're doing. If the reason of just doing something for the sake of doing something, you kind of lose why you're doing it. So I think you've got to have a why behind what it is you do. Obviously, for me, from a PE perspective, my intents are always embedding a deeper understanding for the children to learn and grow, and that can be from any sort of sport perspective. So if we're looking at football, for example, my intent for the children is just to very slowly build a foundation of understanding behind particular skills. But actually, the bigger picture of it is we're getting the children out, we're getting them moving, and we're getting them physically active through a medium of sport and play. That can be translated to anything. If we was to look at a setting, for example, and they were going on a walk, we want to have a why. We want to have an intent and a reason. We don't just want to be taking children out round the block and coming back again because there's nothing there for the children to be able to kind of cling on to. Like, what are we doing? Why are the children doing that? Are we going out just for the sake of getting out, just to tick a box to knock off those hours that the NHS are saying they want us to be doing 3 hours a day with our children? But then they're not going to want to do it again. The staff aren't going to feel motivated to want to do it again. So why are we going out? Maybe we're going to a local park to collect, I don't know, sticks and leaves to bring back into our setting to build something or to create a design. Are we going to a local fire station or train station or somewhere like that? And then we're going to talk about what we're doing. I think there's ways to bring intent into any sort of physical activity that you're doing that's outdoors that you can kind of then have a deeper embedding of, whether that be from a sport perspective or a PE perspective in my case, or if it's just an outing that happens within a setting on a normal day.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the, as you say, it's the activities themselves, the PE based activities themselves, but it's much more than that as well, isn't it? It can be those everyday experiences, you know, going out to the local park that falls within this category as well, and it all as a holistic type approach, it all contributes to that physical activity. It's really important that that's taken on board, isn't it? That it's everything that he's done that has an active element to it. So to think about the earlier sector as a whole, so educators, childminders, absolutely everyone within the sector, how can outdoor activities within those settings be promoted? Thinking about all of the children, so the youngest of the children within our settings, right up to the elder groups as well. Have you seen anything that's really stuck in your mind? Anything that's been particularly powerful?
I mean, I've worked in the early years now for coming up to 9 years. And I worked initially for the first 7 years or 8 years in a chain of nurseries. So I worked with 8 particular nurseries. And one thing I noticed with what we done when I was working there was we built a culture around being active and getting out and about, making sure we went on walks every day. All the new staff that would come in, parents that come in for settles or for show arounds, whatever it might be, they were under the impression straight away that the children were going out. So there was this kind of embedded culture within the nurseries that we worked at, that we got our children out, and there was always intent behind it. And I think that is the important thing. I think building a culture around meaningful activity and being outdoors and creating that kind of holistic environment for the child is what's going to kind of help as you go on. There's other nurseries now that I work with that they don't necessarily have that instilled within them, whether that be because there's not policies in place, or there's kind of the risk assessments behind it aren't done. I don't know. There's barriers that are in the way to stop people from doing it. But I think if you can get over those barriers in a safe way, then building around that and creating, as I said, the culture kind of it passes down the line. So as your babies through to your toddlers, through to your preschoolers, but then also the staff that are then coming in as well. Because if you try to bring something in straight away with a team that's not used to doing it, you can feel that resistance. And I think it's kind of slowly building and building. And then you can look at eventually down the line when staff changes over, children change over, that culture of being outdoors and being physically active in a meaningful way is already instilled.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so important, isn't it? And again, like you mentioned earlier, thinking beyond early years and general life, day-to-day life culture, and that culture in which people are embedded is so important, isn't it? And it's that whole team approach, everybody involved in the process is buying into that culture and the values. That's really, really important. Couldn't agree more. And thinking about some of the previous episodes within this series, we've heard about some limitations that settings may experience, such as a lack of outdoor space. So are you able to share any experiences of things that you've done yourself, or things that you've seen that can overcome limitations such as that and succeed in really promoting effective, impactful physical activity?
I mean, yeah, I think environment there is kind of the key barrier that we're talking about, right? So if we're looking at whatever environment we're in, whether we're in a massive outdoor field, whether we're in a normal size, average size nursery garden, or whether we're in a room, there are ways to make the children enjoy being active. So you can take the barrier of, I don't know, it might be pouring of rain, or it might be that they've got no garden space, or it might be that the local area is in a really built up inner city community. But what can we do with the space that we do have? And I think that's where we have to try and find a way to get over the barrier instead. So I've done lessons literally in the last couple of weeks. So we've just finished doing our rugby topic at early years PE. this turn of the year, we've not had the best of weathers. And a lot of the parks that we usually work at, they become flooded really, really quickly. So we've been having to take those sessions back onto site, back into the settings. And then if we can't go into the garden, we're having to do it in the rooms. So I've been breaking down my sessions. Instead of having 12 children in my session that I normally do, or 16 children, I've been reducing the number of children in our sessions to smaller groups so we can maintain the space that we have. We've been really digging deep about the kind of the knowledge side of things. So we're really understanding what we're doing, why we're doing it. You can attach that to many different things. Like we could talk about the body, muscles, bones, etc., like that. And then we have our movement part, which is for me, especially in those rugby lessons, was like a skill base. So we're talking about a particular skill, whether that be kicking in conversions or moving with the ball or how we hold the ball. Um, we've been doing that in smaller groups with the space, having the children then be physical, but also understand and learn the skill by doing, and then coming back in again and then talking about what we've done. So again, I think it's the meaning and the intent behind whatever those physical activities are. The environment is only the place that we have, and we can only work with what we've got. So we can't be making that a barrier because there are ways to come around it.
Absolutely. And we're all aware of the UK weather and the seasons that we have here. And it's like you say, it's really important to find out what works in our settings with what we've got. And then to finish off, Josh, I think it's probably a follow on from what you've already said, thinking about the sessions that you deliver around the body, bones, etc. Really keen to hear more about physical literacy. Are you able to explain how you interpret that term and any examples that you've got about how you put this into practice?
Yeah, so physical literacy is an interesting one. I was at uni about well, 15 years ago, and I did secondary physical education. The first week we were in uni in our uni lecture was the first time I ever heard that term physical literacy. It was a brand new concept. I kind of had no idea beforehand what it was, and it was quite this is quite interesting. I never heard it again after that first week being in there. So I kind of just sort of it sat to the back of my mind. And then back in 2022, 23, Sport England brought out a consensus for this to happen, for the change, for the statement to become something more known. And I was lucky enough to be part of that panel of people, panel of experts, to be able to kind of understand, unpick, and change and develop that statement of what physical literacy is. And at the back end of last year or early last year, the statement was released, and the statement reads, physical literacy is our relationship with movement and physical activity throughout life. Pretty much everything I've spoken about so far, you can relate back to that. So if we break it down, you're looking at our personal relationship. So what's our relationship with movement? Well, that only comes from our experiences that we've had. So if our experiences leading up to adult life on anything to do with being physical has been negative, then we're always going to have that negative association with being physical. If you look back through like an old school PE session, what back in the days it might have looked like in the 70s or the 80s, you're thinking high-waisted shorts pulled right up high, tight t-shirts, running laps around a pitch in any weather, any conditions. It's enough to bring fear to anybody. I mean, I'd have hated doing PE back in the day if that was the case. And I think that stigma's kind of stuck. And for those people that have experienced any sort of activity like that, then their physical literacy and their experience is going to be so low because of what they've been through. So if we look at that now from a child's perspective, what can we do for our youngest children, from our babies to our toddlers to our preschoolers, to make sure that they don't have those experiences that we as adults may have been through? So how can we make being physical fun? How can we make it meaningful? What can we do to get them hooked into wanting to be outdoors, wanting to be running around, wanting them to enjoy being physically active and not just sort of sit at home and not do anything? Obviously there's a balance. We have to appreciate that it is difficult, and there are things that we can't expect our children to be 100 mile an hour all the time. There are times where they need to slow it down again. But when we do go outside, when we are active, how are we making that meaningful to the child? And then that leads on to that end part of the statement of throughout life, or our entire life frame. So yeah, it's a big thing that I try and focus early years PE around. Not explicitly, like I don't talk about this with the children, but deep down for myself, I want to make sure that every child in my session is having a fun time. They enjoy what they're doing, so they want to come back again. So that when they go to school, I don't see them anymore, but when they go to school, they can kind of take from that and everything they've learned and enjoyed with us in early years, they can take through to the next stage of their life.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is, isn't it? It's putting those foundations in place, developing the foundations whilst they're in early years, obviously, to enable them to develop those at later stages in their life, like you say, right the way through to adulthood as well. Really, really important. And thank you, Josh. It was great, absolutely great to hear from you there and share your specialist knowledge. It was really interesting and informative. I learned lots myself, and I hope our viewers have felt the same as well. And I hope there's lots of useful tips and ideas that they can take away into their settings as well. Once again, thank you, Josh, and thank you all for watching. Really do appreciate your time, and hope you found it all useful. And please do check back to view the previous podcasts, and make sure that you send it right across your networks as well. That'll be great. So finally, thank you, Josh, once again.
Thanks, Seb. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.